Editor Joel here. We are going to be talking about some spoilers for Graceless Heart and Once Upon a Broken Heart. If you're fine with that, enjoy the show.
I always come back to Once Upon a Broken Heart. I love that series for its vibes, and that's it.
It's clear that Ibañez isn't focused on trying to trick her audience. Her focus is writing a good story, and the best way to tell that story just so happens to be tricking her audience.
Welcome to the Bright and Ambitious Writing Podcast, where we help you write, revise, and share your next story. I'm your host, Kailey Bright.
And I'm the producer of the show, Joel Seymour.
Insert applause here.
That will be in the episode, don't worry.
Good.
You recently read a book that you have not been able to stop thinking about.
Yes, I recently read Graceless Heart by Isabel Ibañez. It's a historical fantasy about a sculptress in 15th century Italy who wins a competition in order to save her brother, but actually ends up becoming almost the property of a very wealthy immortal family.
Oh.
Yes. The reason why this really caught my eye is because I was able to pick up a lot of the clues the writer was giving throughout the story. And so I was able to figure out all these different plot points. I was able to guess most correctly. And some, when I didn't guess correctly, I was pleasantly surprised. And usually when I can guess the plot, or especially the plot twist of a book, I get really annoyed. Partly because I feel like I'm becoming a better reader and writer in the process, so it feels like I'm getting ruined, right?
Yeah.
But it can take away, or more often than not, it feels like, you've spoiled the story for you before it can even happen. But oftentimes, it's way more important as an author to lay the groundwork so when people do guess and they guess correctly, they can feel rewarded. And those who didn't pick up the clues can still be shocked.
Right. Both of those things feel like they're at odds with each other. And I feel like a lot of people get really invested in the idea of tricking their audience that they don't really focus on writing a good story. And how to avoid that trap, I think, is going to be something that we talk about.
Yeah, and I can tell you right now through Graceless Heart.
Perfect. So, what is the main mystery of Graceless Hearts for those of us, myself included, who hasn't read it?
Well, that's just the thing, Joel. There are multiple mysteries. There are multiple times where there are reveals, which is something that's important when you're writing a book.
Yeah.
There has to be something that someone is trying to figure out, and that usually is the reader alongside the main character. So in Graceless Heart, there are several, but the main ones I really want to focus on for the purposes of this episode is when we find out why this family wants her to carve out these magical stones. By the way, there's magical stones. I did say this was a historical fantasy.
Right. The contest that she wins in order to save her brother is...
Yeah, a sculpting. She's a sculptress. She places what's called a nightstone in the statue's heart. And that tells everyone immediately that she's a witch, which is like something you don't want to be in 15th century Italy.
Right.
But the Looney family does take notice of that. And something that I guessed, first off, she uses the love interest, Saturnino, as the reference. Because of that, I was like, oh, well, of course the Looney want these magical stones. They want to put them inside their hearts and continue to live forever.
Right.
Because they're immortal.
Right. How are they staying immortal?
Yes. And I was just thinking to myself, well, perhaps, she accidentally portrayed exactly what they're hoping to gain. So I was like, oh, I'm so excited for this. So I even texted my friend Hanan. I was so confident. I wanted her to know that I had guessed it correctly. And so we do get to the part where she finds out. And so this is important because this is how you both reward the person who discovered the mystery and reward those who had no clue. There's the reveal And then there's the second reveal. So it's correct that the Looney family want to carve out these Nightstones that only Ravina can get. Our main character's name's Ravina.
Right.
To insert into their hearts and keep them immortal. The second plot twist is that the reason they're immortal in the first place is because they used to be statues.
Oh, they're essentially like gargoyling it up.
Yes. I mean, like, they do take on, like, living human flesh form. They don't look like statues, but
Right.
it explains why they look perfect.
Because they were literally sculpted.
Yes. And it makes sense why they are these immortal beings, because they actually already have Nightstones inside their hearts, but they only last for a certain amount of years. It's just extended 100 instead of, like, 30.
Right. It's replacing your car battery.
Pretty much. And, like, what's so brilliant about that, besides the fact that, you have essentially plot twists layered upon each other, is that when you think about it, it's almost so obvious. Because to me, I was like, oh, the heart that she used for the sculpture is the night flame, so they're going to use the night flame. And I didn't think to myself, she literally sculpted him in appearance. They are statues. Like, I didn't think about them as statues, and it made, so like that was so rewarding.
Right. For just fans of this book who are listening, or people who are trying to write their own book.
Mm-hmm.
I think either one, you're going to appreciate this. If the whole big reveal was that the stone is what gave them life, then you would be dragging your feet because you, as the reader, has already figured out, oh, that's what gives them life. And then it takes the main character 30 more chapters to try to figure that out. And you're waiting, playing this game of catch up with the book itself. And it's like when you're trying to explain, when you're trying to explain an app to an old person.
I love that's your first thought, because my first thought was you're like trying to explain to your friend that her boyfriend ain't it.
Yes, that's it.
But it's going to take her a lot longer to get to that point than you do.
And there's like nothing you can do to speed up that process. You just have to let her wait it out. And then when she's like, you know what? Maybe the way he was treating me wasn't actually good. You're fine. You're just like, thank you. Finally. But again, if you don't structure other bits of information with your big reveal, your readers are going to be wasting their time reading the rest of your book and not skipping 30 chapters. But when a reader is going through this, just like you did, you had that as soon as you thought you figured it out, you stopped looking. And I think that's really important. You can trick your audience, but you need to make sure that they feel smart.
Yes.
You need to acknowledge them feeling smart.
I love that. That's so good. I mean, even to further the real world analogy we just made, it would be like, you think this guy might not be right for your friend, and you've tried to explain that, but she's not there yet. But then by the time she does catch up and she's like, you know what, maybe he doesn't treat me well. And you're like, finally, yes. And then she just says, he cheated on me. You would gasp because you thought he was like bad, but not like cheating level bad.
Right.
So like you had your moment of, aha, but then you also had your moment of, oh my gosh, tell me more right now. Oh my gosh. I mean, obviously, like, this is like a terrible scenario, but there is a sense of excitement to learn about the hot goss.
Right.
And that's the same kind of thrill I got through Graceless Heart, going, oh my goodness, while also being like, I knew it.
Yeah. And I think that is the thing that struck me, because I remember when you were reading through it and you were like, I think I figured it out. When that has happened with other book series that we may or may not acknowledge, that was a disappointment.
Yes.
Like, we recently watched a movie where like 10 minutes in, you're like, oh, I know the exact story arc that this whole movie is going to have. And you immediately lost interest. I'm curious, when you got to that point where you're like, oh, I know exactly what's about to happen. Like, obviously the payoff was well structured and well thought out. But what kept you engaged in that moment?
So something that I think Isabel Ibañez does extremely well in this book is how she uses the third person point of view. And I don't have an answer for you for like first person point of view versus this third person, but the way that I at least want you to kind of like consider how you decide to leave clues through every facet of your writing, including the point of view. So for Graceless Heart, it's third person limited, but it's limited each chapter. So like each chapter focuses on a different character. Most of the time it's Ravenna, and I'm realizing now her name might be Ravenna. It's too late for me. I've been calling her Ravenna since day one. It's not my fault. There's 2 N's, and I thought there was 2 E's as well.
Happens to the best of us.
Her name's Ravenna. Most of the point of view is from Ravenna. But when Ibañez, the author, uses the opportunity to go to different point of views, and this includes like the antagonist, the Pope, and sometimes even the Looney family, in particular Saturnino. The surface level reasoning is to give the reader an understanding of what's happening outside of Ravenna's capture.
Right, which is definitely needed in a fantasy, historical fantasy like this.
But, and I love this, the author uses those moments to give us insight that our main character doesn't know. And it's up to us whether or not we pick up on it.
Do you have like an example you can give?
Let's see. Well, here's an example of where I got one wrong, where I thought this is where the plot was going to go and I was incorrect. In a weird way, happy about it.
Yeah.
So we get the Pope's point of view, and we find out that he has the Nightstone that Ravenna carved out that won her the competition because it got stolen at a party. And so originally, like, we don't know who stole it. We figure out who does through the Pope.
Right.
And then now the Pope has it, and no one else knows that he does except us. And since at this point we know that it gives life, and at this point Ravenna's brother has been murdered in front of her because he was doing something in the Pope's name. I theorized, especially since this is like a series, her brother would be revived through the Nightstone by the Pope because he's such a loyal servant.
Right.
And that made him a great antagonistic force.
Sure. That makes sense. And I think that would be a cool plot point, especially since that's the whole reason why she started this journey in the first place.
Exactly, yes. Like, it'd be very poignant. But what actually happens instead is that her brother stays dead. The Pope doesn't use it for her brother. He actually uses it for this war machine, which was like alluded to in the story, and I honestly kind of like forgot about it at this point. Like it was very much in the background. Again, it was simmering. Yeah. So the reason why I felt rewarded that her brother stayed dead is because a lot of books nowadays have fake out deaths. A lot of movies have fake out deaths. We really don't want to commit to killing our characters. So the fact that this book committed to her brother staying deceased, like murdered, and not returning, I felt satisfied with that because, okay, you committed to breaking a trope.
Yeah. In the same way that like you need the structure to be able to support your big reveals, you also need to be fully committed. You know, I think a great example of a piece of media failing to do that is like the immediate one that comes to mind is like the Star Wars sequel trilogy. I remember in episode 7, you're trying to figure out who's Rey related to, what line of Jedi is she from? And then in the 8th one, it's revealed she was a nobody. And that made a lot of people upset, but it was a big commitment. Like that whole movie was just filled with big upsetting commitments. And I think the reason why that sequel trilogy is not remembered fondly is because as upset as people were at episode 8, episode 9 made it so much worse because they did not commit to any of those things. Every big decision that they made, including, you know, Rey not being related to any Force users, was completely retconned, and it made it feel like a big waste of time.
You definitely have to be consistent. Ibañez does not lose the thread.
Right.
You know, like the Pope has the Nightstone. He doesn't use it in the way that I expected, but he does still use it in a way that makes sense and was built up in the background.
Yeah.
Like there was a foundation laid for it.
Yeah.
Just not the one I was expecting.
Right. And again, it's clear that Ibanez isn't hyper focused on trying to trick her audience.
Mm-hmm.
Her focus is writing a good story.
Mm-hmm.
And the best way to tell that story just so happens to be tricking her audience. If you go into a story trying to prove how smart you are, regardless of whether or not you succeed, everyone's going to be so annoyed.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. No, no one wants to feel like they're being talked down to.
And so I think when I say that, like, you have to have the structure and you have to have the confidence, I think that's what I mean.
Okay.
You need to have a good story planned out, because if your goal is to just trick people, you're very likely going to take shortcuts in order to do so. And that's not going to feel rewarding for you or for them. It's going to feel cheap. And I think Graceless Heart does an excellent job of proving that you don't have to do that.
You don't have to sacrifice one for the other.
Right.
Yeah. And again, like I really think it goes back to layering your plot twists. You know, like this is a reveal, but also this more devastating thing is also happening.
Yeah. That also reminds me of like the big reveal in like Watchmen, where you find out who the main villain is.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, I knew it was that guy. And then you realize like halfway through his speech, you're like, oh, he's already done this plan.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's over. And like just that realization where, again, you think you know, and then it turns out that you're right. And so you feel validated, but there's a piece of information, because you were so satisfied in your own deduction, you completely miss as a reader or as a viewer.
Mm-hmm.
And that revelation, that big plot twist happens not to cheap out the audience, but to fulfill the themes that author was trying to explore.
No, I think this is an excellent example.
Yeah.
Especially because, again, it does break up the let me explain my evil plan trope. And you're just like rolling your eyes, but then you realize he's not explaining what he's going to do.
Yeah.
He's explained what he has done.
Yeah.
And that is where your heart sinks.
Yep. Yeah. And again, it makes sense for the character, it makes sense for the story, and it makes sense for the themes.
Yeah. That also kind of brings me into, when do I keep things a secret and when do I keep things explicit as a writer?
Mm-hmm.
And what I've learned as both an avid reader and avid writer is, if you have it in your synopsis, it should not be a mystery.
Yep.
If you ever think to yourself, I want this in the synopsis, don't make it a mystery.
No.
Because guess what? That's like the first thing most people read is your synopsis. So if you spend too long getting to what they read at the, like, literally before they ever opened the book, that is not a good way to write, my friend.
No.
If you have it in your synopsis, get to it and get to it fast.
Mm-hmm.
You get 3 chapters max.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying. Something that I struggled with, especially with my trilogy, is wanting to be as secretive as possible, because I didn't want people to find out the plot twists. But that was a me issue.
Yeah. We mentioned the pitfall of when a reader has figured out something and the main character hasn't, and it feels like a slog.
Yes.
But you want it to still be a mystery, but you've gotten to the point where it's just like devastating realization that the character would know at this point. How do you deal with that? Well, how do real people deal with things that they don't want to believe? They deny.
Denial.
Like when I read your series for the first time, I remember that difference that I felt compared to when I had read other books, where the plot twist I pieced together about 5 chapters before it like technically happened, but I was in denial because I was like, no, that's not that
and then you keep reading because you're like, surely not.
Yeah.
I have to know though, but surely not.
Yeah. Like I knew in my heart of hearts that this character was about to betray me, but I had to believe because I was like, that's my favorite character. This can't be happening. And that would have been miserable if Nora, your main character, was like, la, 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 just going about her day, hanging out and being like, that was weird. I don't know why that happened. Anyways, what instead happened was the fact that Nora herself was also in denial, that she's seeing the same things I am. She's making the same connections I am. And then she's saying to herself, no, that can't be. Like, we are going through the same steps of the grieving process together, rather than me speed running through it and watching her slowly slog her way through.
Instead of shaking your head at Nora, you're shaking your head at this whole situation.
Right, exactly. And I think that's the difference. Your readers can absolutely get upset at situations, but as long as they're not getting upset at your characters, you're good.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think that's how you make sure that when you have a plot twist like this, when you have it well structured and supported, when you have it multifaceted, when it's driven by the themes rather than trying to get a cheap trick out on your readers, that's how you do it well, is having that's the final piece for me, is having someone in your story that your readers can connect with. The character is empathizing with your readers.
Again, this is a journey typically you and the main character are on together. So the more you can align your reader with the same reactions as your main character, the better. Truly.
Yeah.
It's interesting because like that's how I felt with Graceless Heart. Even when I wasn't with Ravina, I was just like, Ravina,
yeah,
I have something I need to tell you right now.
Yeah.
But obviously she can't hear me. I'm like the dad in Interstellar.
Yeah. Yeah. That's actually a great analogy. Yeah. It's that scene constantly.
Yeah, it's that scene constantly, but like it's rewarding, and you can cut this out if it's too much, but like I always come back to Once Upon a Broken Heart.
Yeah.
Because I love that series for its vibes, and that's it. But what really makes me roll my eyes is how Stephanie Garber insists that Evangeline is a clever main character, and she does have her moments. For sure. However, most of the time, she is so dumb. She's only clever when the plot suits.
But the plot requires her to be unobservant and clueless for most of it.
It's not unobservant because Lord knows she can see dresses all day long. But like there's a betrayal of character because we're supposed to think, oh, Evangeline Fox, she's the fox, she's so clever, foxes are clever, but she's not. We can't kid ourselves. Evangeline is not a clever person because she literally spends 3 books talking about her favorite fairy tale, Ballad of the Archer and the Fox. Man, I really love that fairy tale. And never once does she go, is this about me?
Right.
Is this play about us?
Yeah. Genuinely takes her 2 books for something that I put together the first time she mentioned it.
Yes.
And she mentions it
too much.
So often.
Yeah. So again, but this is actually great because again, this is a good example of this is something that should have been explicit.
Yeah.
This is something that should have just been out the gate, even if it was just to herself being like, I've always liked this story because I've always kind of imagined myself as the fox.
Yeah.
And she kind of does do that in like the first book. But then like for the rest of the series, anytime someone like puts her in a fox outfit, she's kind of like, that's weird.
Yeah.
I'm like, girl, you live for a fairy tale. You love fairy tales. Why are you not embracing this with your full weird heart?
Right.
So there's that aspect that's super frustrating.
And then that whole there's multiple chapters in the second book where she's trying to figure out, well,
who's the archer?
Who's the archer? Well, yeah.
You again, we are told that you are clever, and yet it takes too long for her to even consider that Jax could be the archer. Right. And I would be less upset if she did do the thing where she's just like, no, he couldn't possibly. Right. Because she knows, but she would rather stay in denial the same way he would rather stay in denial because he doesn't want to kill her.
Right.
Like that's some good tension.
Yeah. And like she does nail it with Jax in that series.
She does.
Like
Stephanie Garber does Jax well.
His denial is so palpable throughout, and it almost works in what we're talking about, where we could theoretically empathize because he is so clearly in denial.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is we don't get to be in that denial with him because we're in the POV of Evangeline, who's just like, he's acting weird anyways.
I know. But like in lieu of plot twists and mysteries, something that Stephanie Garber does really well with Once Upon a Broken Heart is the mystery of what's in the Valerie Arch. And that one has a layered mystery as well, because when you open it, actually get a couple of reveals that, Chaos is the prince or the monster that the Valors made. The Valors are still in the Arch.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why Jax wants to have the door opened is so he can use the stones that opened the Arch in order to go back in time and be with the woman he thinks he needs to be with.
Right. And all of this is satisfying because the entire plot and the character motivations all revolve around this one reveal.
Mm-hmm.
This is what all of the effort and the mystery elements of this series should have been devoted to entirely. Because Evangeline being the fox and Jax being the archer is super obvious.
It's so obvious.
We don't need to have like her doing mathematical equations in the air trying to figure out something we figured out on page 13 of the first book. All of that is just like, okay, well, yeah, I know. Let's skip. The arch, you're constantly trying to figure out, and everything in the plot revolves around that. And so when you get to it, it has the multifaceted reveal. You have multiple answers that could be right leading up to it. But then once you actually get there, it all makes sense. That scene where they enter the arch is a climactic moment for the plot, for the character arcs, everything. And so that reveal feels earned and feels valuable because of what it does for the plot. There's a reason why the second book is like overwhelmingly considered the best in the series. Everything that had been built up to that point gets resolved and like fully realized. And then after that, it's just trying to figure out how do we go from here.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we've really covered.
Yeah, I think we have.
Graceless Heart knocked it out of the park.
It did.
Again, it's so satisfying to hear you be able to like talk about a book that you were like, I figured something out about that, and that being exciting rather than deflating.
Mm-hmm. It really was. I'm very thankful to Carrie Ann Hanan for suggesting I read the book. I'm thankful for Goodreads for literally like highlighting it on its banner, which I think is the reason why it's been on our radar.
It was a good read and it made you a better writer.
It did.
Thank you for listening to Bright and Ambitious. Since you're here still,
hit the subscribe button.
What did you think of Graceless Heart or the Once Upon a Broken Heart series? Leave your comments below. If you disagree with us, we'd love to hear all your reasons why. And if you agree with us,
you don't listen to authority. Don't click that subscribe button.
bye.